Hi, Dr. Lepora here, and I'm here to talk to you today about making decisions. And one thing I want to say just off the bat, first and foremost, indecision is still a decision. So whether you choose to make a decision or not, it is a decision and it has an impact that is very real. We're going to spend the next about 10 minutes talking about 7 ways effective CEOs and CHROs make effective decisions. Now, if you're a leader and you're responsible for other people, more than likely you have quite a few decisions to make, and sometimes more decisions than you have time to make. And so that's why it's very important for you to not only taking decision making very seriously, but taking the timing that you make those decisions seriously. So a lot of times when we look at the decisions that leaders make, there's a huge impact on some leaders, government leaders, millions of people. For some organizational leaders, hundreds of thousands of people they're making decisions about. And usually we think if we make a bad decision, wow, it's going to be like the end. But newsflash, a lot of times the worst impact is not the bad decision that we can correct. A lot of times the worst impact is a decision that was not made, a decision that was delayed, or a decision, a very dangerous way of making decisions is through emotion, through cowardly feelings. These ways, those decisions can be brutal and brutally destructive. I remember working with a CEO, this was about a year ago, who's restructuring the team that he led. A lot of delay that he was making, it was not out of kindness, which he might have wanted to tell himself, but it was out of cowardice. Did not want to make those decisions that he knew inevitably he was going to have to make. The organization was shifting, the products were shifting, and inevitably he was going to need a very different structure, a very different one from how the organization existed. His delay caused brutal consequences for the organization because everyone knew that there was a shift taking place, and therefore the rumor mill was very active. There was contention, there was unhealthy competition, attrition that was not desired that may have not otherwise happened, and overall more expensive talent that had to be paid for from an entry perspective with the timing that he delayed to make those decisions. Now, a lot of decisions leaders have to make are painful ones, are difficult ones, but when there's a delay of a decision that is inevitable, what we then see is a very negative impact. So we're going to talk about 7 ways you can make decisions more effectively. So the first one, we're going to focus on the Eisenhower matrix. And this one is important to start with because, again, as I said before, we're talking about prioritizing our decisions, looking at what matrix does this decision stand in. Is it something that we need to decide now? Is it something that we need to schedule later, not put off, not ignore, but schedule later? Is it something that we need to delegate? Or is it something that is just really irrelevant because it does not make an impact on the organization? It's just an idea that someone has. Your decision falls in one of those 4 buckets. And so you want to make sure that you know what bucket your decision falls into so you can schedule it, give it the attention that is appropriate. What we do know is if everything is urgent, then nothing is important, right? So you want to sort your plate and not have your plate sort you ever, because then you're just going to be in reactive mode. So then there's the observe, orient, decide, and act approach, called the UDA, some people call it. And this is when you have to make decisions very fast and that the conditions are they just keep moving. Think AI now, combat flight leader, which is where this came from. Sometimes we get paralyzed in decisions that we need to make very fast and we cannot afford to slow down. So we can run the loop. We can observe what's happening today. We can orient ourselves, our organization, our business toward what's happening, decide on a move, whether it's today or within 90 days, but within the appropriate timing, and then decide and agree on when we're going to act. The speed has to be very fast sometimes in these types of environments. So we have to be ready to move fast and schedule appropriately. Then there's the 1 door, 2 door approach. And this is often used by Jeff Bezos, right? Where we're looking at ensuring that we match our decision speed to the stakes that are involved. Are we exiting a market? Are we selling a division? Are we letting our best operators walk out the door? One-way doors, we need to slow down, right? Because we don't want to make a decision that we cannot reverse and be stuck there. Because some decisions are irreversible, believe it or not. But then there are the 2-way doors. And those 2-way doors, while we may go out of that door, we can also come back in. Those decisions, we can make with a little bit more flexibility, knowing that there's some changes we can make. Number 4 is the ICE method. That's the impact, the confidence, and the ease. So we want to ensure we're scoring competing ideas. We're not just making decisions based off of a hunch. Hunches are powerful. Gut instincts are powerful, but we want to calculate. A CHRO came to me once with all of these priorities, right? There were 12 to be exact, and there was no strategy. It was really a wish list. And so we talked about how important every item was and how they all were just so ridiculously urgent. But then when we started assigning points to these different priorities and strategies, what we realized, what the CHRO realized, is that it was really more so based on a lobbying contest. Which C-suite members reached out the most? And we don't want to do that. We want to base it off of quantitative, qualitative impact. That is going to be very important in making the right decisions. So number 5 is the SPADE framework. Setting people alternatives, decide, and explain. And not the spades game, even though that could be fun as well. So what we want to do is we want to look at the setting. What setting are we in? And what makes up the setting, right? That is like whether it's country regulations that you're designing based upon geographical areas, the people, who has input, who's going to be impacted, who's going to be the most powerful voice, alternatives. Have at least 3 real options to decide from and explain, tell everyone what was chosen and why. This is going to be key in really understanding how you're going to make a decision, not just make a decision, but also bring people along in that decision. That's what makes the SPADE approach so effective. You're able to not only make the right decision, explain why you made the decision, but help others to understand why you made the decision as well. It's not that consensus is the goal. Now, consensus is great, but it's not always achievable. It's not always realistic, but clarity is. So we want to make sure that when you make a decision, everyone understands that decision and why it was made. Number 6, the pre-mortem. So I like a good pre-mortem. And really what we're doing is looking at what is the worst thing that could happen with this decision. And we're not doing that just to scare ourselves out of the decision. We're doing it to prepare for the decision. And it could be 2 different decisions or what have you, but we're creating sort of like a D-Day, if you will, of the worst things that can happen. And then we're working our ways backwards to say, how are we going to mitigate those things from happening? So sometimes this can help us, the mortem can help us in making decisions toward an inevitable event, but it could also help us in preparing and deciding which event is most appropriate to take place. So optimism is great. I love optimism among others who I work with, but it's a terrible due diligence strategy. We do not want to rely on good luck because that will get us in trouble every time. Number 7 is the 10-10-10 rule. And so what does that mean? So the 10-10-10 rule essentially is looking at 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years. This is for pulling out those short-term emotions, getting them out of the way. Because at the level that you're operating on, emotions can be extremely expensive, perhaps more than you can afford. A CEO wants to fire a division president, right? That's a really big decision. In 10 minutes, he might feel vindicated, right? In 10 hours, he might feel great. But how will he feel in 10 months? In 10 months, he might feel a huge leadership hole. He might have a hiring scramble that he cannot solve for because that person carried 10, 20 years of tenure or what have you. So he might decide in doing that 10-10 exercise to keep the leader because it's going to cost him more to get rid of this leader in this moment than it would cost him if he was to keep them. Now, that's obviously a brutal example, but it's a realistic example of what oftentimes you as a leader have to focus on. Brutal decisions that do not feel good at all. And so it's important that not that you use all 7 of these methods, but it is important that you have a method that's going to be challenging to you, that's going to introduce a level of objectivity and squareness. It's going to help you to make those decisions that you might otherwise make out of emotion. The stakes are often going to be high and outcomes may be brutal either way, but I do know if you do not make the decisions in an effective way, the outcomes will definitely be brutal. So decide with purpose, decide what is valuable and what is most time sensitive. And if you want help making these decisions, feel free to reach out to NextGen people and we can help you, partner with you, provide strategic sounding boards through our effective coaches, all certified, and they can partner with you to make those most difficult decisions in your strategy, in your operations, in your processes. If you like this, please like and definitely share with someone who you care about.